Hey guys, it's your course director Emily Ray here. Just wanted to give you a little bit of positive, productive feedback on your visual resumes. Now, this might not be the first, second, or even third resume that you have completed while in the MCBS program, but perhaps it's the first one where you're starting to implement the aesthetic styles of your personal brand, maybe even your personal brand logo. So I'm going to go through each of these that were submitted and offer a few ideas for how to evolve it to its next best place moving forward. Now, it would benefit you all to watch this entire review, not just the part that is dedicated to your resume. There's so much that we can learn from one another and the choices and inspirations that we have made in designing these resumes. So a few other points to be thinking about as we move forward. First is there a clear connection between the skills and experiences that you've shared and the types of jobs that you want to get into in media communications? For example, if you want to become a graphic designer or get a job in graphic design, hopefully you have listed the types of skills and experiences that would align with that type of work or that type of position. Also, in every job you've ever had or in every role, there's a certain task list or the responsibilities of that position. Now, in addition to listing those, I want you to be thinking about what was your unique contribution in your role. How did you execute those tasks in a way that only you could to make and leave a signature impact? I know that I probably shouldn't have to say this, but I will say it and actually beg you to spell check, double check, and then have a human eye on your resume, just in case you have an omitted word or a misused word in terms of the context that you're using it in. Spell check isn't perfect. It's definitely a start, but you certainly wouldn't want a misspelled word or a misused word to be the reason why you didn't get your dream job. And then last but not least, resumes are living, breathing documents, kind of a representation of where you are at any point in time in your career. And because of that, you need to keep adding to it to the extent that you are getting new experiences, new skills, certifications, projects, volunteer experience, any of those things that can help paint the picture of you as the professional that's right for the job that you are applying for. So we're going to start here with Matthews. So very clean in its presentation, but the layout offers me some questions right off the bat. One, so we have all this empty space here right up at the top. Have you thought about potentially moving your logo over here and then having your name on a single line and a little bit bigger up here at the top to make a nice strong impact? Why does the text wrap at this point? Why doesn't it flow all the way into this area? With these boxes, it almost makes it look like this information is self-contained. For example, only information about practical skills goes here. Only information about education goes here. But in this section, you have past employment, and then it looks like, as I'm reading it, that this information over here is supposed to be associated with these jobs in these places over here. And to me, that's a bit of a disconnect. I would go ahead and get rid of this line and stack this information on top so that there's a clear association between those content chunks. We've got your practical skills here, so I guess those are more of the soft skills. You might want to go ahead and then call these your technical skills. You say, software and programs I am proficient in, and you list them here, but you've given all of these more of a heading, so I'd say go ahead and add that heading there too. It's clean, but just in terms of sort of the organization of the information architecture, if you will, a bit of work needs to be done there. Next up, we're going to look at Tracy's. So here we have, what looks like a very clean, very experience-packed resume. It does take on sort of more of a traditional or old school style. When you have a lot of information, a lot of skills and experience to add to a resume, it's harder to, strip away all of that great keyword-rich content in favor of a design aesthetic. But still, that is the challenge of this particular version of this resume, because you will tweak your resume for any number of jobs that you are going to apply for. I would also assume, because of your background with acting, that you also have maybe a version of this that's more specific, to getting those types of roles that you're seeking. Here the assumption is, and for everybody, with these resumes that I'm reviewing, the assumption is that you want to get a job in the media communications industry because you are in the media communications degree program. So the feedback that I'm providing is I'm wearing that particular hat. Looking at this here, one thing that I'll say is that the spacing, sort of, you've got the justification on this, so it spreads out to the margin here. It puts a lot of sort of variation in the spacing between words, and because of that, it just doesn't look as easy to scan the information. It almost makes it look like this is a bit of one of those word search games where you're kind of circling, the words that or the letters that, you find that make up a word. So I might recommend just left aligning this because, again, if you'll remember, when someone is scanning information, they look for that F-shaped pattern. So that's sort of what you want to employ here. The same way you do it for a website would be the same way that you would do it on your resume. You devote a lot of space up here to these icons, and they add some visual bling to your page here. But I don't know. I think that perhaps you can make them a bit smaller and move them up into this area, and then potentially have more breathing room between these elements here. I appreciate that you've applied this blue color to the sections here on the resume. I might also make this a bit bigger in terms of the font size and maybe a bit weightier as well. I don't know if you have developed any kind of personal logo or style guide associated with your brand at this point, but if you did, perhaps the inclusion of, the elements that you identified within that on this. Happy to continue to work with you. If you have an alternate version that you had questions about, also willing to take a look at that and share any thoughts. Ultimately, you guys, you will have to make the decision about how appropriate your resume is for whatever job you're applying for. We work in media communications many times in creative industries and many times in very professional, producing type aspects within this industry. So, maybe the visual resume isn't the one you want to submit, but maybe it is. So again, this is an exercise in being able to streamline your content down to some of the essence of who you are and brand it with who you are as a media professional. Next up, we're going to take a look at Janie's. So sort of disclaimer, and that is that when I'm looking at these Word docs in the web-based sort of Chrome extension that allows me to do it, many times it kind of screws up the formatting of what it is that you try to do. So I want you to remember that, because if you send somebody else a Word doc version of your resume, it might be that it's not displaying quite as you designed it or as you intended it. My recommendation would always be to send a PDF document of your resume, not a Word. So, Janie's got this super fun, kind of quirky logo that we've seen develop over the course of the program. Glad to see it continuing here. We've got a link to your website. Your objective, is to create content and then your experience. Again, I bet that you probably didn't design it to have these particular sort of jagged indentations, but that is how I can view it as a Word doc here. I want you guys to stay away as most as you can from bolding, like adding that sort of emphasis. Here, you don't need to say job title because sales associate tells us that. Or company, justice. You could say sales associate - justice and then just leave the dates. And when you're doing that, you're going to give yourself more space to play with in terms of adding more content or just more breathing room for the content that you have. I might add a little weight to the headings or the subheadings. Here we have a space between or no space between, and here we have quite a bit of space. Now again, I don't know if this is because of the wonky word formatting, but definitely something I want you to consider. This as is looks quite scattered and probably not exactly how you designed it. If you'd like to resubmit a version of this that has been flattened, so to speak, so that the content isn't refloating in this way, I'd be happy to look at your design as you intend for me to look at it. But here are a few notes for you to apply as you move forward. Getting rid of the arbitrary bolding, the arbitrary listings here. Again, if you have college experience, you don't need to share your high school experience, just your college experience, please. Yeah, I look forward to seeing another version of this, Janie, because knowing your talents in design, I can only assume that this is what's happening because of the Word doc in the web application. Next up, we're taking a look at James's resume here. So very clean and very very consistent with your personal brand, cohesive. Recognize the logo, recognize the color scheme. The first thing though that I do notice is the center alignment of this text. So as I mentioned before in the review of Tracy's resume, employers are going to scan this the same way that they scan a web page, and they're going to be looking for that F-shaped pattern of information. Information is more easily scanned when you're applying headings, subheadings, and bulleted lists. It's a bit more difficult in terms of readability for center aligned text, because in English, when we read from left to right and our eyes are wrapping at the end of the sentence, it is an easier transition to have a consistent starting point along like a straight edge here, instead of wrapping around and then having to jump to a new part or a new sort of location at the start of each line. So first recommendation is left aligning this text here. You've got so much industry experience. All of that is very nicely summarized here, right? So and that would be the challenge, right, for those of you who have so much experience, is that I've asked you to do this on a one-page resume, right? And so if you have been working for years and years and projects, you really have to be choosy about how to articulate the full extent of what you do in limited space. And I think you've done a nice job with that. So here we've got your education. Really can appreciate the additional certification that you've added here. You are a total professional, so I definitely want to see you with a custom domain name in the very near future, and then that way you can get a custom email, and you are just going to be looking totally legit across the board. But overall, super nice job with this. A few tweaks and you are in business. Next we have, this was done on Canva, so this is Kenneth's. It's highly stylized, and cool to see how you used that tool to create this. The first thing I notice is how this text runs right along the edge here. Anytime you have a document, you want to make sure that you're observing consistent margins or paddings within that document, because think if it gets printed, the printer might cut this off, right? And this is some essential information, especially because it's your contact information. So I would indent this quite a bit over in this area. It looks like you have some space for it. And then, yeah, so to the extent that you have, it's hard to kind of quantify this distance, but make it consistent, right? So observe maybe 3/4 of an inch padding or margins around your document, and make sure that your content goes inside that. So here, this looks like communications is misspelled because it looks like it has a 0 in front of it. Again, you guys, spell check for days. Have a friend or family member. As I'm scrolling down here, I would like to see, so we see this kind of all caps, larger font for the headings, but how about some subheadings, right? So that this kind of all of the information flows together. It's particularly hard to scan too because of the background image. I do think that there's enough contrast in the color, so nice job with that. But maybe so where it says social media content creator, this is a slightly bigger version or maybe it's a slightly smaller version of this stylized font, right? So maybe it's all caps and sort of that condensed typography, just so that our eyes have that like very scannable flow through the information. It looks great. I appreciate really the style that you've done here with the background image and with your logo, the color choices. But again, be thinking about this will likely be printed, and this information would be sacrificed at that point. Nice job, Kenneth. Next up we have Jackie. So here, just a really, beautifully styled template, it seems. We start out with your name in this box here, and I believe that there should be space between the letters and the edge of the box, right? So padding inside of it so that your name isn't butting right up against the edge there. You see the way that we do have some space all around the word experience, especially top, bottom, and on the left here. That's also what needs to be replicated within this box. There's a lot of lines here, and I don't quite understand the delineation. So we got line, icon, and then line, and then your email address here. It would make more sense to me if the icon was right next to the information that it's associated with. So, something that you can consider moving that up, and then that would give you more space. So here we have your experience, right? So executive assistant at Los Angeles Film School, which is super cool. And this reads like paragraph, right? And then it's got some weird breaks. Why is there a line break, like extra spacing here? Remember, employers are going to scan, potential employers rather, are going to scan this information. And so this would be better represented as a bulleted list and instead of paragraph form, because people don't read paragraphs, they scan the information from headings, subheadings, and bulleted lists. Kind of going down, we have a super empty space here, but then we go to the next page. It's my estimation that once you shore this up, shorten it up, that you could pull all of the things in this particular column up onto this page. I see the inclusion of your logo here, but I'm not quite sure that it matches the visual style and aesthetics that you have. Certainly not any of the fonts and this sort of more floral aspect we don't see with this more linear design style. So it's a bit off, doesn't match. We've got your education here, and I think that if you were to go ahead and turn these into bullet points and just be a bit more streamlining with this information, you could get this onto one page as requested by the assignment description. But overall, really nice in terms of the visuals, and look forward to seeing the evolution of this. Last but not least, we've got the resume of Natalie. So super clean, super styled. It does take a bit of a more traditional styling to it. So similar to what we saw back here on Tracy's, right? So it's a bit more traditional, but with the blocks and with the coloring, you do see a bit more of the personal style. Couple of notes. One is that we see a section here called highlights, but then we also see this section called highlights. Should this be skills? And I would, you showcase a lot of, so you are a detailed, dedicated, focused admin professional who looks like you can, multitask and take care of a lot of things for a lot of people. My question for you is, to what extent does this summary translate to the types of jobs that you want to get in media communications? Or do you want to use your media communication skills in these types of admin professional positions? It's not there's no right or wrong answer. It's just which one speaks to you more. Are you going to leave being an admin to do something in media, or are you going to use media and infuse that into what you do as an admin? Because the way you would approach your resume writing or seeking jobs, would be based on that. So here it just shows some of the work experience that you've had, which is, pretty significant. Tons of, great experience, a lot of keyword rich content here. We got some weirdness with these bullets. So I don't know, because there are so, we're not going to need your high school experience there. So I don't know that you need bullets for this section. I think just sort of the three clumpings of information would be fine there. Maybe this is skills, because it's a mixture of soft skills and technical skills, right? So how fast you can type, the transcription, but then over here your software knowledge. So you might just want to say skills and software, and then maybe organize these by the soft skills moving into the more technical skills. Overall, this is a great start. My curiosities lie in how you see using this as you move forward into your career. So certainly great place to take the content that you've got here, but evolve it with more intention in the next version of this. If you guys have any questions about the feedback that's been provided here, please give me a shout. Again, I'm always happy to continue to be a resource for you. If you push forward with these changes and want to show me what you've been working on, please do send an alternate version. You can upload it right to the feedback section of this assignment. I get notified when that happens, and I'd be happy to take a look. Again, let me know. Thanks.